Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Hubert Massey, who is a public artist and fresco muralist at the Marygrove Conservancy. Hubert, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, man. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Well, I am so excited to be able to talk with you. Obviously, you are an immense artistic presence, not only in Detroit, in the region, nationally, and especially want to talk to you about kind of your residency at the Marygrove Conservancy, one of our great creative partners. But first, I thought I would just start out. If you could kind of just, for our audience, kind of, describe your art and how you view your kind of role as a public artist, as a fresco muralist.
Yeah, so part of my well, how I describe myself is I do monumental pieces of artwork. I celebrate communities through the form of art, and I'm a storyteller. I tell stories through the form of art. And so some of my art travels back in time when I do frescoes, because frescoes are like thousands of years old, from ancient cave paintings to Renaissance, to Michelangelo, to Diego Rivera, and to today. So, but I see myself as basically a storyteller and trying to preserve history through the form of art.
It is just like incredibly beautiful and, of course, so impactful. And when you kind of view that history, um, uh, does it inform you? Does it guide you? Do you feel like you're kind of creating? I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, how do you build your identity in kind of the continuity of the history of form?
Yeah, so part of my process is that I do a lot of community forums because there's a lot of stories. Detroit is over 300 years old. And when I take a deep dive into the community to do a public piece of artwork, we have those conversations. And when we have those conversations, a lot of times these stories come up. Like the one I did at Center for Creative Studies, there's a large tile mural. But in the process of doing that, I had a community forum. And I didn't know at one time African Americans were not allowed to walk on Ferry Street and brush or near brush. So there was a house that was on the corner that was bought by Mary Bethune. She was buying homes all over called the Women's League. And part of this process was that we would sell you the house if you remove the front entry port or front entry to Brush Street, which is on the side of the house. And if you go by there to this very day, you actually see that. And that's in my mural. And I didn't know George Washington Carver had a studio, or not a studio, a lab that was funded by Ford Motor Company over in the same area. So these are some of the things that I come across when I'm doing these public pieces of artwork, especially for the public, and when I do these community forums and all.
I mean, that's incredible. And especially just kind of the way in which you're telling a story, especially stories that even people who are, embedded here in our community,
Yeah.
maybe their whole lives don't even realize
Right.
this history and these stories that define so much of how we live.
Yes.
Um, is there going to kind of your technical process, right? So
Yeah.
could you kind of share with the audience, because especially there might either be those who are, in roles with institutions where they're like, we want to engage, we want to commission an artist, or there's artists who are like, how do
Yeah.
you go about this? From kind of that sense of an institution or, even the public saying, okay, we want you to tell this story, or we want something here. What
Yes.
happens? How does that unfold to actually manifest into the
Yeah.
art itself?
Yeah. So say for instance, doing the fresco, I did the fresco piece at which was Cobo Hall. Now it's Huntington Place. And it was a 30 foot by 30 foot fresco painting. So I sat down with a group of people like I normally do and have conversations because I want to be able to not only tell the story, but narrate the story in the visual art piece. But I work with structural engineers, fabricators. I deconstruct walls, rebuild walls to accommodate the artwork. Because sometimes the artwork can weigh anywhere from 25 pounds on up. So, say for instance, the one at the Huntington place weighs 6 tons. So we had to bring in structural engineers. Basically, it's almost a construction site at the beginning in order to actually create the artwork. Then once that's done, uh, I work on the cartoon drawings, which is actually full scale drawings that I do, so I can get traces from that to transfer it onto the wall. The fresco that I'm describing is something that's been going on for, like I said, thousands of years. Cave walls were actually are lined with limestone, and somebody decided to take the red dirt, which is oxidized pigments, mix it up with water, paint inside the wall, and paint animals forms of cave painting, which lasts for thousands of years. Then you fast forward, um, then you got you have Michelangelo that, so instead of painting the cave wall, they take the limestone, they crush it up into a powder form, add water to it, turn to a paste, and they plaster it up on the wall. So you have to have plasters that do that. And, uh, and then a week it takes 3 weeks for each layer to cure. So it's about 5 or 6 layers or so. So it's a very it's probably one of the hardest mediums to work in as far as for frescoes. But there's a lot of preparation, a lot of logistics that goes into it. And that's what's beautiful about it because art kind of hits the crossroad of art, architectural, structural engineers, fabricators. It reaches all that. And when you get that combination, then you get people like Alexander Calder, Marshall Fredericks, artists who are building monuments that's going to last for a long time.
Wow. And it seems literally kind of capturing and depicting history, our history.
Yeah, history. Sort of like Diego Rivera.
Yeah.
So I learned how to do frescoes. I studied under Diego Rivera's assistants, Stephen, Lucy, and Block Dimitrovs. They were 80 something years old when I met them. That was back in 1995. Uh, because I was able to learn from them, because they were there in 1932 with Diego Rivera. So they were in their probably early 20s or so. So they had the formulas, they had the measurements that you need in order to create a fresco. So they just happened to be passing it on in 1995. And I was one of 12 artists, and out of the 12 artists, I was the one that picked up on it. And one reason that really drove me to want to do this was because I came here to the city of Detroit as a sign painter. And when billboards were all hand painted, and Diego Rivera was a sign painter, didn't know that. And so I painted 40 to 50 hours a week in oil paints on billboards. So when
Wow.
you see the billboards, you probably thought, well, those billboards, they look photographic. Well, they were hand painted with oil paints.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
so sometimes people talk about, like this idea that people need to put in 10,000 hours, to be a
Yeah.
success, that kind of thing. Do you feel like that all of that experience that you
Yes.
got is what enabled these immense, incredible work
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yes, I do because actually I painted 40 to 50 hours a week for 12 years. So that's a lot of time. So it gets to the point where it's second nature. Now think about it. If you back in the Renaissance period, there are no distractions. There are no TVs. There are no technology like we have today. And so when people drew, they drew pictures. They painted and draw every single day. So to me, the sign company was probably one of the last studios of that type of genre to be able to paint and draw every day. And I had an opportunity to have that for 12 years up under my belt.
Wow.
So I don't know if you were familiar or if you from Detroit, but back in the early 90s, my first commission was the Athenaeum or Athenaeum Hotel. It was the Greek-like statues that I painted, and that was done in oil paints. And it was 30 feet by 15 feet. They were diptychs.
It's just incredible. And so, one thing that I wanted to ask you about too is community and a sense of community. You're obviously based on the campus of the Marygrove Conservancy, one of our great communities here in Detroit. And just wondering, kind of, how do you view that? How is that a value for you and kind of impact you as an artist as you think about your work?
Well, it's a very to me it's very valuable to me because one, I'm in the community. Two, I really have an open door policy. If somebody want to learn how to do, if they want to come in and watch me design something, or they want to participate in actual some of my projects and all, I'm more than open for that type of thing. In fact, a lot of times when people come in and they work with me for a while, they become some of my apprentices
Uh,
and because I don't mind passing information on. I mean, I just had coming up, I had great teachers. Um, I studied in University of London in England when I was 21 years old, which changed my whole trajectory because I was an athlete. I was a football player. I was pro prospect in my sophomore year in college, and I suffered a knee operation after my sophomore year. But I was up for All American and I had a lot of accolades and all. But when I went to Europe and I got an opportunity to go to the British Museum, the Tate Gallery was on the campus of the University of London. Um, Got to see Stonehenge, which is the weirdest thing out in the middle of nowhere. But when I came back, my whole attitude had changed. It was an eye opener, to be quite honest. I didn't realize how young this country was until I came back because I sat at the Thames and where Shakespeare's home. I went in Shakespeare home, and Shakespeare home was near the Thames, and went to the Global Theater. It was just a lot of history. Pubs were 300 or 400 years old. I mean, we don't even have a lot of buildings that's 300 or 400 years old in the United States. But and I always tell people, I said, you need to travel. You need to get out of the country. I was down in Mexico City to see Asqueros, Orozco, and Diego Rivera's work down at the Palace of the Fine Art, or the Palace of the, yeah, Fine Art. Uh, and the things that I seen was just totally unbelievable. One reason why I went down there was basically to reverse engineer portable fresco panels that Diego Rivera was doing. Reverse engineering portable panel because they were doing it in steel. I came back, I talked to my engineers. We did it in aluminum, and they in California. They said they have the largest portable fresco in America, but they don't know the largest portable fresco is at the Flint Institute of Arts Museum. It's 17 feet by 88 feet, and I believe it's probably about 20 something panels,
wow.
and it's a fresco.
This is just incredible work that you do, and obviously all of us in Detroit get to benefit from it on a
Yeah.
constant basis, which is
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all of my guests, this work that you do, and especially the creative process that you share, that is such a beautiful process. There has to be some tough days, days where there's a block or you feel like you're not able to overcome an obstacle. Just wondering if there's anything you can share with our audience about methods you use or a method you use that helps you to get past those tough points in
Yeah.
your creative process. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of my process is that you know, there's no right or wrong in art. I always say, in order to have day, you got to have night. In order to have a wrong or a right, you got to have a wrong. So if you work in between those two balances, and also watch the words that you use, because the words that you use empowers you. So if you say you can't, then you won't. So be conscious of how you project yourself and how you say when you're doing things and stuff. Yeah, you might not be able to get it today, but you will be able to get it. So that's one of the things that I try to stress. And there's no such thing as mistakes, because, like I said, you need in order to get a right, you got to have a wrong. So when I draw, I don't even erase, because I know maybe the first line I put down is not the right line, but the next line will balance because it's the other line that I already put down. So it works out all right.
Hubert Massey, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you do for the art form, for our community, and thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. And thanks for the opportunity to be able to express myself. Yeah.